the facility that was never meant to be beaten before we begin. If you're drawn to stories that crawl under your skin, stories about places built to erase hope and test the limits of the human mind, then do me a favor right now. Hit subscribe, like this video, and drop a comment. Because once you step inside this story, there's no turning back. The alarm didn't scream. It didn't need to. At 2:17 a.m., deep in the Rocky Mountains of Colorado, a silent red light flickered on inside a concrete control room buried beneath layers of steel and reinforced walls. On the screen, a single-cell camera glitched, just for half a second. In most prisons, that wouldn't mean much. In ADX Florence, it meant everything. Within moments, boots echoed down corridors no inmate ever saw. Armed response teams moved with mechanical precision, fingers hovering near triggers, eyes scanning for a threat that might not even exist. Somewhere behind those walls, a man sat perfectly still in his cell, unaware, or perhaps fully aware, that the most secure prison on Earth had just entered lockdown. ADX Florence was designed for moments like this. Officially known as the United States Penitentiary Administrative Maximum Facility, it wasn't built to rehabilitate. It wasn't even built to punish in the traditional sense. ADX was built to contain, to isolate, to make escape not just impossible, but unthinkable. The glitch turned out to be nothing. A loose cable, a technical hiccup, but the response revealed the truth. ADX Florence operated under the assumption that danger was always present, always watching, always waiting for the smallest crack. And that belief was not paranoia. It was experience. The story of why ADX Florence is considered escape-proof doesn't begin with its concrete walls or steel doors. It begins decades earlier, with a series of failures that nearly tore the American prison system apart. In the late 1970s and 1980s, the United States faced a growing problem. Federal prisons were overflowing with inmates who weren't just violent, they were influential. Gang leaders, domestic terrorists, organized crime bosses. Men who could order murders with a whisper. Men who treated prison walls like minor inconveniences. They escaped. They orchestrated riots. They bribed guards. They controlled entire cell blocks from behind bars. One of the most infamous incidents happened in 1983 at the United States Penitentiary in Marion, Illinois. 2 correctional officers were murdered on the same day by inmates who were already serving life sentences. The message was clear. Some prisoners had nothing left to lose, and traditional prisons were no longer enough. The government responded with a radical idea. What if there was a place so controlled, so isolated, that influence died the moment an inmate entered? What if escape wasn't just unlikely, but structurally impossible? ADX Florence was the answer. Construction began in the early 1990s, hidden away in Fremont County, Colorado, surrounded by open land and mountains that felt more like exile than geography. From the outside, it looked almost ordinary. Low concrete buildings, no towering walls like in the movies. That was the first deception, because ADX Florence wasn't designed to intimidate from a distance. It was designed to crush resistance from the inside. Each cell was a world unto itself. 7 by 12 feet, poured concrete bed, stainless steel desk molded into the wall, a toilet sink combination that shut off remotely. Even the shower was inside the cell. Inmates didn't walk to communal areas. They didn't mingle. They didn't see each other. For 23 hours a day, they were alone. The single hour out of the cell wasn't freedom. It was controlled movement into a concrete recreation pen, sometimes called the dog run. High walls, a sliver of sky, no contact, no conversation. But isolation alone doesn't make a prison escape-proof. History had proven that desperate minds could overcome despair. ADX Florence went further. Every inch of the facility was under surveillance. Cameras watched constantly, some visible, others hidden. Sound sensors picked up any unusual noise, and motion detectors tracked every movement. The guards didn't walk predictable routes. Their schedules changed randomly. Even the food was designed to prevent manipulation, nutritionally complete but deliberately bland, stripped of anything that could be traded or turned into a weapon. In the internal systems, inmates weren't known by their names. They were numbers, data points, risks to be managed. But inside this fortress lived men who had outsmarted governments, law enforcement, and entire criminal networks for years. One of them was Marcus Hale. That wasn't his real name, of course. His records remained sealed. Hale was a former extremist strategist, a mastermind with connections that spanned continents. He'd never pulled a trigger himself, never planted a bomb. But investigators believed his coordination alone was responsible for dozens of deaths. When Hale arrived at ADX Florence, he didn't protest or scream. He didn't resist at all, and that unsettled the staff more than any violence could have. From day one, Hale studied patterns. Not the guards, the systems. He observed the light cycles, the exact timing of food deliveries, the low hum of the ventilation shafts. He never filed a single complaint or made any requests. For months, he just sat silently in his cell, reading, exercising, and thinking. In a prison built to break the human mind, Hale seemed to be getting sharper by the day. Then, strange things started to happen. Maintenance reports began flagging minor issues. Not system failures, just irregularities. Slight temperature fluctuations in certain cell blocks. Tiny pressure changes in the ventilation ducts. Nothing alarming on its own, but to a senior engineer named Daniel Price, the pattern felt wrong. Price had worked in federal facilities for 20 years. He knew what coincidence looked like, and this wasn't it. He requested a full systems audit, and what he discovered sent a chill down his spine. Someone was testing the prison, not trying to break it, but probing it. The ventilation system at ADX Florence was designed to be completely isolated. Cells didn't share ducts in a way that would allow for communication. But the subtle airflow shifts suggested intentional interference. Tiny, precise adjustments that required a level of understanding far beyond what any inmate should possess. Price took his findings to Warden Ellen Graves, a woman known for her unshakable calm. She listened, her expression unreadable, and then ordered a silent internal review. No lockdowns, no alerts. If someone was planning something, she wanted them to feel confident. As investigators began reviewing hours of surveillance footage, they noticed something even more disturbing. During routine checks, one camera feed near Hale's cell consistently glitched. It wasn't long enough to trigger an alarm, just a fraction of a second, but it was enough to obscure a few frames. It wasn't a malfunction. It was timing. ADX Florence was built to prevent escape through brute force, through coordination, or through corruption. But what if the threat wasn't force at all? What if it was patience? As the investigation deepened, Warden Graves faced a terrifying possibility. The problem wasn't that Hale might escape. It was that he was proving something far worse. That even the most secure prison on Earth could be studied, mapped, and understood. And if it could be understood, it could, in theory, be beaten. The question was no longer if someone might try to escape ADX Florence. It was whether they were already in the process of doing so. The true extent of the problem became clear when technicians finally opened a sealed maintenance panel beneath the cell block. A panel that should have been untouched since the Prison-esque construction. What they found inside forced the facility into its first full-scale emergency review in years. Because someone had been there, and they had left a mark. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe. The maintenance access panel should have been pristine. It sat behind a locked steel grate, buried beneath layers of concrete and security protocols that existed on paper and nowhere else. According to the original architectural plans, that space had been sealed permanently after construction. No reason to return, no reason to open it, no reason for anyone, staff or inmate, to ever think about what lay inside. But when the panel came free, the air that escaped smelled wrong. Stale, metallic, touched. Inside, investigators found scratches along the inner casing. Precise, deliberate, not vandalism, not wear. Measurements had been etched into the metal with something sharp enough to bite, yet small enough to go unnoticed during routine inspections. Someone had mapped the prison from the inside. Warden Ellen Graves stared at the markings in silence. ADX Florence didn't operate on fear, but this discovery shook even her. The prison was designed around a single philosophy: isolation prevents coordination. Every system existed in redundancy, layered so deeply that failure in one would be meaningless without failure in all. And yet, here was evidence of intent. Daniel Price, the engineer who had raised the alarm, traced the markings with gloved fingers. "This isn't random," he said quietly. "This is a flow study. Air pressure, vibration points, maintenance cycles. Whoever did this understands systems. Not like an inmate, like an architect." That was the moment the question changed. Not how someone was testing ADX Florence, but who had given them the knowledge to try. The review team began working backward. Every maintenance log, Every contractor, every upgrade since the prison opened. ADX Florence was notoriously closed off, but even it required human hands to function. Humans made mistakes. Humans talked. Humans could be compromised. As investigators pored over years of data, one name surfaced repeatedly, not as a suspect, at least not at first, but as a constant presence in the prison's infrastructure history. Michael Rourke. Rourke was a civilian systems consultant who had worked intermittently with the Bureau of Prisons during the early 2000s. Officially, he helped optimize airflow efficiency to reduce costs. Unofficially, he had access to restricted schematics that even some wardens never saw. Rourke had died 5 years earlier. Heart attack. Case closed. Or so everyone thought. When Graves ordered a review of Rourke's correspondence, something didn't add up. His emails had been wiped clean weeks before his death. Not deleted, overwritten, as if someone didn't want a trail. Meanwhile, Marcus Hale remained silent. No outbursts, no requests, no changes in behavior. That silence became its own form of pressure. Guards reported feeling watched when passing his cell, even though Hale often sat facing the wall, unmoving. Psychologists at ADX were trained to read patterns. Most inmates broke under isolation. They developed rituals, tics, outbursts. Hale showed none of it. Instead, he adapted. He exercised at precise intervals, slept in controlled cycles, read the same books repeatedly, not for pleasure, but for structure. His behavior suggested something chilling. He wasn't waiting for rescue. He was preparing. Graves authorized an unprecedented step. Hale would be moved, not to another cell, but to a different wing. The idea was simple: disrupt any pattern he might be exploiting. ADX Florence rarely moved inmates without cause. The disruption alone would send a message. But the move revealed something worse. As Hale was escorted through the corridor, hands cuffed, head lowered, one guard noticed him pause. Just for a fraction of a second. His eyes flicked upward, tracking a vent grate above the corridor. Later, when footage was reviewed frame by frame, analysts noticed the same thing. Hale had memorized the prison well enough to recognize a deviation in the airflow system outside his own cell. ADX Florence is the most secure prison on the planet, a place where escape is not just improbable, but a statistical impossibility. Yet, inside this fortress of concrete and steel, one inmate was playing a game no one understood. His name was Hale. He wasn't trying to get out. He was trying to prove he could. The first clue was a flicker in the surveillance system. A single 1.3-second loop in a hallway camera feed, so brief it was initially dismissed as a glitch. But it happened again, then again, always in different sectors, never repeating. Investigator Graves, a man who had spent 20 years plugging holes in federal prisons, felt a cold dread. These weren't glitches, they were signatures. The investigation led them to Hale, a former systems analyst convicted for dismantling the financial records of a multinational corporation. He was brilliant, quiet, and spent his days reading philosophy and advanced mathematics in his cell. When Graves confronted him, Hale simply smiled. A system is only as strong as its weakest link, Mr. Graves. And every system has one. He offered nothing more. Frustrated, Graves' team tore apart Hale's life, searching for a Confederate, a hidden message, anything. They found nothing. The real break came from an unexpected place, a sealed evidence box from an old, unrelated case. Inside was the personal journal of a prison systems engineer named Rourke, who had died in a car accident 2 years prior. His death was ruled an accident, but his last journal entries were frantic. He wrote about a ghost in the machine, an entity that was learning the prison's digital infrastructure. Rourke believed someone was subtly testing the system's limits, not to break it, but to understand it completely. He suspected an inside job, but died before he could prove it. Graves realized the truth. Hale wasn't communicating with someone on the outside. He was communicating with the prison itself. Over years, through tiny, almost imperceptible manipulations of the electrical grid, a flicker of a light, a momentary surge in the HVAC system, he had been teaching himself the prison's digital language. The camera loops weren't a tool for escape. They were a conversation. He was mapping every wire, every server, every line of code. The team discovered Hale's masterpiece. He had created a backdoor, a digital key that could grant him level 0 access to every system in ADX Florence. He could open any door, shut down any camera, control the entire facility. But he hadn't. The key just sat there, and used, a testament to his intellectual dominance. In their final meeting, the air was thick with tension. Graves looked at Hale, no longer seeing a prisoner, but a phantom who had conquered his cage without ever leaving it. "Why?" Graves asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why go to all this trouble just to prove you could do it?" Hale leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with a chilling intelligence. "You built a labyrinth and called it inescapable. You forgot that for some, the challenge isn't finding the way out." He paused, letting the silence hang in the air. It's becoming the Minotaur at its center. Graves left the interview room that day understanding a new kind of fear. ADX Florence was still the most secure prison in the world, but now it had a ghost, and that ghost held the keys. The prison hadn't contained Hale. It had just become his kingdom. The limits of the unbreakable ADX Florence did not sleep. At least, that was the belief. The prison operated on constant vigilance, rotating guards, layered redundancies, algorithms humming beneath concrete and steel. Yet in the days following Warden Graves' conversation with Marcus Hale, something subtle shifted. The prison began behaving like a living organism under stress. Systems recalibrated more often. Diagnostics ran longer. Micro-failures, too small to trigger alarms, appeared and vanished. Hale had planted doubt, and doubt, in a place built on certainty, was corrosive. The Emergency Council ordered a full systems lockdown. No maintenance unless authorized at the highest level. No schedule changes. No improvisation. The prison would become rigid, unyielding, exactly as it was designed to be. But rigidity was what Hale understood best. Behavioral analysts reviewed every second of footage from his cell. For days, he did nothing unusual. He sat. He read. He exercised. He slept. Then one analyst noticed the timing. Hale adjusted his routine by seconds, not minutes, after each systems check. He was listening, not to voices, to patterns. ADX Florence emitted a symphony of sound no human was supposed to parse. Distant fans, pressure shifts, hydraulic murmurs. Hale had learned the rhythm, and when the rhythm changed, he responded. That was when Graves realized the truth they had been avoiding. Hale didn't need accomplices. The prison itself was his partner. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning at 5:42 a.m. A guard in C Wing reported dizziness. Then another. Within minutes, 3 officers requested medical attention. The air felt heavy, they said. Hard to breathe. Sensors showed nothing abnormal. Oxygen levels were within range. Carbon dioxide stable. And yet, the symptoms were real. Medical staff traced the issue to a localized pressure imbalance. Harmless on paper, but disorienting in practice. The system corrected it automatically. The incident was logged and dismissed. Until it happened again, this time in a different wing. The pattern was unmistakable. The prison wasn't failing. It was being nudged. Carefully. Precisely. Someone was triggering micro-responses, small enough to avoid alarms, large enough to prove a point. Hale was demonstrating control without touching a single control panel. Graves ordered him transferred to a fully isolated observation cell. No vents shared with other units. No adjacency to maintenance corridors. If Hale was influencing the prison through its systems, this would sever the connection. The transfer was executed flawlessly, and for 12 hours, nothing happened. Then, at exactly midnight, the lights dimmed across the entire facility. Not off, just dimmed. For 3 seconds. 3 seconds was all it took. Every backup system engaged simultaneously, creating a cascade of conflicting responses. Doors didn't open. Alarms didn't blare. But the prison hesitated. And in that hesitation, the myth shattered. ADX Florence had been forced to choose between redundancies. Engineers worked through the night, tracing the anomaly to a software conflict triggered by an impossible condition, one that should never occur unless multiple systems were influenced at once from within. Graves stood in the control room, watching technicians scramble, and understood the final truth. Hale wasn't escaping. He was cornering them. By morning, the decision was made at the federal level. Hale would be removed from ADX Florence, not because he had broken the rules, but because he had exposed them. Publicly acknowledging the vulnerability was unthinkable. Quietly eliminating the variable was easier. The transfer would be secret. No press. No records beyond sealed files. Graves visited Hale one last time. "You're leaving," she said. Hale looked almost disappointed. "That was faster than I expected." "Why?" she asked. "Why do all this if you never planned to walk out?" Hale leaned forward, his voice calm. Because prisons like this don't exist to hold people. They exist to reassure everyone else. I wanted to know if the reassurance was earned. Graves asked. Hale smiled faintly. For a while. The transfer convoy left before dawn. 2 armored vehicles. Air support. Routes changed at the last second. Every protocol followed to the letter. Halfway to the undisclosed facility, the lead vehicle lost communication for 6 seconds. 6 seconds was all it took. No doors opened. No shots fired. No chaos. When communication was restored, Hale was still there. Calm. Restrained. But one of the marshals was pale. He claimed Hale had spoken during the blackout. Just one sentence. See? Even now, the investigation that followed was buried deeper than any case file in recent memory. Officially, nothing had happened. ADX Florence remained escape-proof. The narrative held. But inside the Bureau of Prisons, changes were made quietly. Systems redesigned. Protocols rewritten. Not because of an escape, but because of a demonstration. Michael Rourke's journals were sealed. His name erased from future audits. His warnings never acknowledged. Warden Graves resigned within the year. She never spoke publicly about Hale again. Years later, a junior engineer reviewing legacy code noticed a comment buried deep in the system. Unattributed, undocumented. It read, "Perfect systems fail when they forget who's observing them." No one knew who wrote it. And no one could prove Marcus Hale ever did more than sit in a concrete box. ADX Florence still stands. Silent, imposing, unbroken. But those who know the full story understand the truth. The most dangerous inmates aren't the ones who try to escape. They're the ones who make you question whether escape was ever the point. And if you think this story was intense, you might want to stay close. Because the next one goes even deeper.